The Deep Space Monitoring Station picked up the signal at 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Lieutenant Jack Harper was the only one awake on the night shift, sipping his third cup of coffee when the alert flashed across his screen. At first, he thought it was a glitch. The signal pattern didn't match any known human spacecraft. "Computer, verify signal source," Jack said, suddenly wide awake. Signal verified. Origin: non-terrestrial. Classification: unknown. Jack's hand hovered over the emergency alert button. Humanity had been searching for signs of alien life for centuries, but now that the moment had arrived, he hesitated. This would change everything. He pressed the button. 30 minutes later, Admiral Susan Miller marched into the control room, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. 4 other officers followed close behind, their faces tense. "Show me," she ordered. Jack brought up the signal data. It appeared at the edge of our solar system. "Admiral, the object is moving at incredible speed, but slowing as it approaches Mars orbit." Susan leaned closer to the screen. She had led fleets during the Third World War, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. "Is it a natural phenomenon?" she asked. "No, Mom. The trajectory changes indicate it's under power. And there's more. We're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database." The room fell silent as they watched the blip on the screen draw closer to Earth. "Open all channels," Susan commanded. "If they can hear us, let's make first contact." Miles above Earth, the Krizon scout ship slowed its approach. Inside, Commander Vexthor studied the blue planet with 6 yellow eyes that blinked in sequence. His scaled skin gleamed under the ship's lights as he turned to his second-in-command. "Another world of prey," Vexthor said, his forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth. "Scan for weapons capabilities." The second-in-command, a younger Krizon named Draknar, worked the controls with clawed hands. "Primitive nuclear weapons, some orbital defenses, nothing that poses a threat to our technology." Vexthor made a sound like rocks grinding together, a Krizon laugh. For centuries, the Krizon had conquered worlds across 3 galactic arms. Their species had evolved from apex predators, and that instinct to hunt had taken them to the stars. No species had ever successfully resisted them. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet," Draknar reported. "Let us hear these creatures before we hunt them," Vexthor ordered. Admiral Miller's voice filled the Krizon bridge. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Fleet Admiral Susan Miller representing humanity. We welcome peaceful contact with other intelligent life." Vexthor's mouth stretched in what his species considered a smile. "They think they are intelligent. How amusing." He pressed a claw to the communication panel. "Humans, I am Commander Vexthor of the Krizon Empire. Your world has been selected for inclusion in our hunting grounds. Consider it an honor. Most species are simply exterminated." Back on Earth, the control room erupted in chaos as the alien response came through. "Hunting grounds," Jack whispered. "They see us as animals." Susan raised her hand for silence. "Send to all Earth defense stations. Battle readiness level 1. This is not a drill." She turned to Jack. "Lieutenant Harper, you're the first human to detect an alien species. Now you'll help me ensure you're not among the last humans alive." Vexthor watched as small Earth vessels began to move toward his position. "They intend to fight," Draknar observed with surprise. "All prey struggles before the end." Vexthor replied dismissively. "Send word to the homeworld. A small hunting party will suffice for this species. They appear physically weak, even weaker than the Volari, who barely provided sport." As the Krizon ship pulled back to a safe observation distance, Susan Miller assembled Earth's Defense Council in an underground bunker beneath Geneva. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the grim-faced military leaders from around the world, "we are at war with an enemy beyond our understanding. But they've made one critical mistake." Her eyes gleamed with determination. "They think we're prey. The Martian research station was never built for war. Its white domes spread across the red landscape like bubbles on the surface of the planet. Inside Dome 3, Dr. Alan Peterson checked the seals on his makeshift armor as alarms blared throughout the facility. "They're coming," said Tina, a geologist who now clutched a modified mining laser. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Ellen nodded. "Remember the plan. We're not soldiers, but they don't know that." The station's 53 scientists and engineers had prepared for 3 days since Earth sent the warning about the alien threat. They couldn't evacuate in time. The Krizon ship had been spotted approaching Mars just hours ago. "They think we're easy prey," Alan told his team. "Let's prove them wrong." Outside, the Krizon landing craft touched down in a cloud of red dust. Hunt leader Scarvac stepped onto Martian soil and sniffed the thin atmosphere through his breathing apparatus. 5 other warriors followed him, their scaled bodies covered in black armor that enhanced their already formidable strength. "Life signs in those structures," one warrior reported, pointing to the domes. Scarvac made the grinding sound of Krizon laughter. "This will be simple sport. The scouting report says humans are soft creatures with no natural weapons." The Krizons spread out, approaching the domes with weapons ready. They expected no real resistance. This was meant to be a training exercise for the younger warriors. Alan watched them approach on the security feeds. "Now," he said into his radio. Across the station, humans activated the trap they had prepared. The ground beneath 2 Krizon warriors collapsed, dropping them into a pit where stored coolant instantly froze their legs. Another warrior approached Dome 2, which appeared to have an open airlock. When he stepped inside, emergency doors slammed shut, and the chamber flooded with pressurized oxygen. The Krizon's breathing system, designed for their methane-rich home atmosphere, sparked and failed. Scarvac hissed in surprise as his hunting party was reduced by half in seconds. This wasn't supposed to happen. Prey didn't set traps. "Retreat and regroup," he ordered. Inside Dome 3, Alan allowed himself a small smile. "They're falling back." Phase 2. The humans had studied the Krizon ship when it landed. The aliens relied heavily on thermal sensing to track prey. Alan had prepared for this. "Release the drones," he commanded. 50 small maintenance robots rolled out from the domes, each carrying a human-sized heat signature. They scattered across the Martian landscape in different directions. Scarvac's thermal sensors lit up with targets. "They flee," he snarled to his remaining hunters. "Pursue." The Krizons split up, each chasing what they thought were fleeing humans. When they caught the drones and discovered the deception, they were isolated and vulnerable. Alan led a team of 4 from Dome 1, wearing cold insulating suits that masked their heat signatures. They carried mining explosives rigged as grenades. Another team emerged from Dome 5, approaching from the opposite direction. The battle was quick and brutal. The humans had studied weaknesses in Krizon armor from data Earth had sent. They aimed for joints and breathing apparatus. When it was over, only Scarvac remained alive, wounded and trapped. Alan stood over the alien predator, mining laser pointed at its face. "Send a message to your leaders," he said. "Humans aren't prey." On the Krizon homeworld, the High Command received Scarvac's defeat report with disbelief. A simple hunting party had been outmaneuvered by scientists. "This changes nothing," declared Warlord Gratak, his massive frame dominating the war chamber. "The humans were lucky against inexperienced warriors. I will lead the next assault myself." Meanwhile on Earth, weapons specialist Kate Wilson studied the data transmitted from Mars. The Krizon corpses provided valuable information about alien biology. She noticed something interesting about their nervous system. "Admiral Miller," she said, not looking up from her microscope. "I think I found their weakness." Luna Base Alpha shook as another Krizon energy blast hit its shields. Colonel Sam Murphy grabbed the edge of the command console to steady himself. Through the view screen, he watched the alien ships circling Earth's moon like hungry sharks. "Shield status," Sam ordered. "Down to 30%, sir," replied a young lieutenant. "We can't take much more of this." Sam studied the tactical display. The Krizon had arrived with 15 warships, far more than the scouting parties sent to Mars. Earth had underestimated how quickly the aliens would escalate after their first defeat. "They're trying to establish a forward base here before attacking Earth," Sam said. "We need to show them that was a mistake." The colonel activated the base-wide communication system. "All personnel, execute Operation Rabbit Hole." Throughout Luna Base Alpha, men and women moved with practiced precision. They had drilled for this scenario since the Mars incident 2 weeks ago. Lunar defenders rushed to evacuation pods, but these weren't designed to return to Earth. Instead, they shot deeper into the moon's surface, toward the vast tunnel network humans had built over decades of lunar colonization. Sam was the last to leave the command center. As his pod tunneled downward, he felt the familiar sensation of lunar gravity, 1/6 of Earth's pull. The lightness that had once disoriented him would now become their greatest advantage. On his flagship, Warlord Gratak watched with satisfaction as the human base fell silent. Lunar Base Alpha's main dome cracked under the bombardment, atmosphere venting into space. The humans abandoned their defenses, Gratak told his warriors. "Begin landing operations. Secure this moon as our staging ground." The Krizon landing craft descended to the lunar surface. Warriors in heavy armor stomped across the dusty ground, their movements hampered by the low gravity. They approached the damaged base cautiously, weapons ready. "Life signs," Gratak demanded over the communication link. "None detected, Warlord," came the reply. They must have fled to their homeworld. Gratak made the Krizon sound of satisfaction. "Secure the facility. Their technology may provide useful intelligence." The warriors entered the abandoned base, moving through darkened corridors. They found empty rooms and powered-down equipment. One warrior approached a strange circular platform in the floor. "Warlord, there are unusual structures here." The floor beneath the Krizon warriors suddenly opened. Hidden panels slid away, dropping aliens into deep shafts. At the same time, the tunnel walls in other sections exploded inward as humans in lightweight combat suits attacked from concealed positions. Sam led a squad through a maintenance tunnel, emerging behind a group of confused Krizon warriors. In the low gravity, the humans moved with swift, bouncing steps that seemed erratic and unpredictable to the aliens. "Fire," Sam ordered. His team launched electromagnetic pulse grenades that shorted out the Krizon neural implants. Kate Wilson's research had revealed that the aliens relied on these implants to adjust to different gravitational environments. Without them, the Krizon stumbled like drunken men in the lunar gravity. Throughout the base, similar scenes unfolded. Humans appeared from hidden tunnels, using their superior mobility to strike and vanish before the Krizon could respond effectively. The aliens' heavy armor, an advantage on Earth, became a liability on the moon. From his ship, Gratak watched in growing fury as his warriors were outmaneuvered. "How is this possible? They are physically weaker than our youngest cubs." His second-in-command studied the tactical displays. "Warlord, they're using the environment against us. The humans move as if born to this low gravity." On the lunar surface, Sam's forces pushed the invaders back toward their landing craft. The humans had suffered losses, but the Krizon casualties were far higher. "This is Colonel Murphy to all Earth forces," Sam transmitted. "The enemy is retreating from Luna Base Alpha, but they're regrouping on the dark side of the moon." On his ship, Gratak paced furiously. For the first time in his long career as a hunter, he felt something unfamiliar: doubt. "These humans," he growled, "are not prey as we understood. They are something different." Young warrior Zivra moved carefully through the great archive on the Krizon homeworld. Her scaled hands touched the data crystals with unusual gentleness for her species. As a junior tactical analyst, she had been given permission to study the human problem. The latest reports from Warlord Gratak troubled the Krizon High Command. 2 defeats, one on the Red Planet and another on the strange airless moon. were unprecedented in their expansion history. Zivora selected a crystal containing human historical records captured from their information networks. She inserted it into the reader and images flashed before her 6 eyes. What she saw confused her. Humans fighting humans. Endless wars spanning thousands of years. Unlike the Krizan, who united early and turned their aggression outward toward other species, humans had spent most of their history fighting themselves. Curious, she whispered. They have been hunting each other. A deeper analysis revealed something even more surprising. Unlike the Krizan, who evolved as apex predators with natural weapons, humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They lacked claws, fangs, or venom. Instead, they had relied on endurance, tool-making, and cooperation to exhaust stronger prey. They are not predators as we understand predators, Zivora realized. Yet they are not prey either. Meanwhile, on Earth's moon, Navy SEAL Frank Martinez adjusted his oxygen mixture as he crawled through the narrow tunnel. 5 other Special Forces operators followed close behind him. They had spent 12 hours slowly infiltrating the dark side of the moon, where the Krizan had established their base. Target in sight, Frank whispered into his helmet mic. Through his scope, he could see the alien command center, a dome-shaped structure surrounded by energy fields. Team 2 in position. Came the response from the 2nd SEAL Squad, approaching from the opposite direction. Frank checked his specialized equipment. The mission was simple but dangerous. Infiltrate the alien base, gather intelligence, and if possible, capture a Krizan officer for interrogation. Execute on my mark, he said. 3, 2, 1, mark. Both teams deployed devices developed by Kate Wilson's research team. Sound emitters that produced frequencies painful to Krizan hearing but inaudible to humans. The aliens nearest to the perimeter dropped to their knees, clutching the sides of their heads. Frank and his team moved quickly through the gap in the patrols. Years of training in zero-gravity environments made their movements fluid and silent. They reached an access point and used captured Krizan technology to bypass the security measures. Inside the base, Frank downloaded data from alien terminals while his team set charges at key structural points, not to destroy the base, but to create a distraction for their escape. Data secured, Frank reported, moving to Phase 2. In another section of the base, Team 2 had located what appeared to be a Krizan officer. They used a specialized stun weapon that targeted the alien's unique nervous system, rendering the officer unconscious without killing him. The charges detonated, causing confusion but minimal damage. In the chaos, both teams extracted with their prizes, the intelligence data and the captured officer. Back on the Krizan homeworld, Zivora prepared her report for the High Command. She hesitated, knowing her conclusion would not be well received. Humans represent an evolutionary path we have not encountered before, she wrote. They lack our physical strength, natural weapons, and sensory capabilities. However, their historical development has created a species that specializes in adapting to defeat stronger opponents. She paused, then added, recommend caution. Traditional conquest methods may prove ineffective against humans. When Frank's team returned to Earth with their intelligence and prisoner, Admiral Miller personally greeted them. The data they had recovered was already being analyzed. Good work, Martinez, she said. What you've brought us could change everything. Frank nodded tiredly. They're planning something big, Admiral. Their communications mentioned a full armada. This was just the beginning. In the Galactic Council chambers, far from both Earth and the Krizan homeworld, representatives from a dozen spacefaring species gathered to discuss the unusual conflict. Most had dismissed humanity as insignificant when the Krizan first targeted Earth. Now, they watched with growing interest. Perhaps, said one ancient counselor, we have underestimated these humans. The vast emptiness of space beyond Neptune suddenly lit up as hundreds of Krizan warships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Their hulls gleamed like polished obsidian under the distant sun. At the center of the formation, a massive vessel dwarfed the others. the personal flagship of Supreme Hunter Krovak. Earth's long-range sensors detected the armada immediately. In the command center beneath Geneva, Admiral Susan Miller watched the holographic display with a grim expression. "So it begins," she said quietly. "The full invasion force." The officers around her stood in stunned silence. The enemy fleet was at least 5 times larger than their worst projections. "Time to arrival?" Susan asked. 48 hours at their current speed, Admiral." Susan straightened her uniform. "Implement scorched space. We need to buy time for Dr. Wilson to complete her work." Alarms sounded throughout Earth's defense network. Across the solar system, the outermost human defenses prepared for a desperate delaying action. Everyone knew many would not survive, but every minute they could slow the Krizon advance was precious. On his flagship, Supreme Hunter Krovak observed the human defenses on his tactical display. Unlike the younger warriors who saw only weak prey, Krovak had lived for 3 centuries and recognized the dangers of underestimating an enemy. "They prepare a layered defense," he noted to his command staff, "unusual for a species facing superior force." His second-in-command, a battle-scarred veteran, nodded. "The reports from the lunar base suggest these humans fight differently than other conquests." Krovak made a dismissive gesture. "Different or not, they cannot stand against the full might of our armée. Begin the approach." The Krizon fleet moved forward, entering the outer solar system. They encountered the first line of human defenses near the orbit of Jupiter, automated weapon platforms and minefields that caused minimal damage but forced the aliens to slow their advance. Meanwhile, in a heavily guarded laboratory on Earth, Dr. Kate Wilson worked frantically alongside her team. The captured Krizon officer had provided invaluable insight into alien biology. Kate had discovered something remarkable about their nervous system. "It's nearly complete," she told Admiral Miller during a secure video call. "The pathogen targets their central ganglion cluster without affecting other organic matter. It won't kill them, but the pain will be significant." Susan's face remained impassive. "How much more time do you need?" 24 hours to finalize the delivery system." "You have 18, Susan replied. "Our outer defenses won't last longer than that." In space, the battle raged across the solar system. Human ships fought with desperate courage, using the asteroid belt to stage ambush attacks before retreating. The Krizon pressed forward relentlessly, their superior technology allowing them to absorb losses that would have crippled most fleets. On Space Station Artemis, positioned in Earth orbit, civilian engineer Laura Bennett watched the distant flashes of battle through a viewport. She had been working on upgrading the station's power systems when the invasion began. Now, the station was being converted into a last line of defense. "Bennett, we need more power to the shield generators," called the station commander. Laura wiped sweat from her forehead. "I'm rerouting everything we can spare. Life support is already at minimum." She glanced at the tactical display, showing the Krizon fleet's advance. Despite humanity's best efforts, the aliens had broken through the outer defenses and were approaching Mars. Earth would be next. An idea formed in Laura's mind. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but potentially effective. "Commander," she said slowly, "the maintenance satellites. We have 24 of them in standby orbit. What about them? If we overload their power cores and position them in a specific pattern," Laura quickly sketched a diagram, "we could create a minefield that their sensors won't detect until it's too late." On the Krizon command ship, Supreme Hunter Krovak received a transmission from the homeworld. Zivara's face appeared on the screen, her expression urgent. "Supreme Hunter, my research suggests caution. These humans." Krovak cut the transmission with an irritated gesture. "Young analysts worry too much. The victory is already ours." But as he returned his attention to the tactical display, he noticed the unusual movements of the human fleet. They weren't fighting as expected. They were herding the Krizon ships into specific approach vectors toward Earth. For the first time, Krovak felt a flicker of uncertainty. The first Krizon ships entered Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Their black hulls glowed red-hot from the friction as they descended toward major population centers. Defense batteries fired continuously, bringing down some of the alien vessels, but many more got through. In Chicago, police officer Darren Johnson watched the sky turn dark with invasion craft. He had served in the military before joining the police force, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Everyone inside," he shouted to the civilians in the street. "Follow the emergency plans." Across the city, people rushed to designated shelter areas. Unlike many alien invasion scenarios from old movies, there was no mass panic. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since first contact. Every city had organized civilian defense units and evacuation protocols. Darren gathered his neighborhood defense group in an underground parking garage that had been converted into a command center. Regular citizens, armed with whatever weapons were available, looked to him for leadership. "The military will handle the main alien force," Darren told them. "Our job is to protect our neighborhood and conduct guerrilla operations against any aliens that land here." A young woman raised her hand. "But they're supposed to be much stronger than us, right? How do we fight them?" Darren projected a diagram of Krizon anatomy that had been distributed to all defense groups. "They're stronger, but they have weaknesses. Their breathing apparatus can't handle our atmosphere for long. Their vision is mainly heat-based, and they're not used to fighting in urban environments." On the other side of the world, in Shanghai, mechanical engineer Lisa Chen led a different kind of resistance. Her team had modified construction equipment into makeshift weapons. Cement trucks became mobile acid sprayers, using compounds that could eat through Krizon armor. Cranes were fitted with electromagnetic disruptors that interfered with alien technology. "Move these to the main intersections," Lisa instructed her team. "When they come, let them advance to the choke points before activating." The first Krizon ground forces landed in Shanghai just hours later. They emerged from their ships expecting minimal resistance. What they found instead was a city transformed into a battlefield where every street and building had been weaponized against them. From his command ship still in orbit, Supreme Hunter Krovac received troubling reports from ground forces around the planet. "The humans are fighting in every city," his communications officer reported. "Not just their military. Civilians are using improvised weapons and tactics." Krovac growled in frustration. "They should be surrendering by now. We've demonstrated our power. No species has ever continued fighting after our show of force." "Perhaps," suggested his second-in-command, "we should increase the pressure. Orbital bombardment of their major cities would break their will." Krovac considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Begin targeting their largest population centers. Show them the price of resistance." The first energy beams struck New York and Beijing simultaneously. Massive destruction followed as buildings collapsed and fires spread. The Krizon expected this would finally break human resistance. They were wrong. In the aftermath of the bombardment, human forces became even more determined. The attacks united Earth's nations completely, erasing old rivalries in the face of extinction. In her laboratory, Dr. Wilson finally completed her work as the ceiling shook from nearby impacts. "It's ready," she told Admiral Miller over the emergency communication channel. "Will it work?" Susan asked, her face dusty from the collapse of part of the command center. "It targets their nervous system directly," Kate explained. "It won't kill them, but it will cause intense pain, enough to incapacitate most of them temporarily." Susan's expression darkened. "A pain weapon. We're better than this." "With respect, Admiral," interrupted Frank Martinez, who had just returned from leading a ground defense in Washington, "we're out of options. They're slaughtering civilians. This gives us a chance without exterminating them." Susan closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the decision. When she opened them, her resolve was clear: deploy the weapon. Operation Endurance begins now. Across Earth, humans prepared for a coordinated counterattack. Despite the devastation, despite the overwhelming technological superiority of the invaders, Humanity refused to be conquered. And in the Krizon fleet, Supreme Hunter Krovak felt something unfamiliar growing inside him as he watched the humans regroup after attacks that would have destroyed any other species. It was doubt. Operation Endurance began at dawn. Across the planet, humans launched a coordinated counterattack against the Krizon invaders. The centerpiece of their strategy was Dr. Wilson's weapon, a synthetic pathogen that targeted the aliens' unique nervous system. The delivery system was elegant in its simplicity. Small drones, no bigger than birds, were released by the thousands. They sprayed the pathogen in an aerosol form that could penetrate Krizon armor through their breathing apparatus. In New Delhi, a Krizon patrol suddenly collapsed, their bodies twisting in pain. In Sydney, alien command posts fell silent as warriors inside became incapacitated. Across the globe, the invaders found themselves unable to function as waves of agony swept through their nervous systems. Admiral Miller watched the tactical displays from the Geneva Command Center. "Status report," she ordered. "The pathogen is working better than expected," her intelligence officer replied. 80% of Krizon ground forces are immobilized. Their ships are trying to withdraw to orbit. Susan nodded grimly. "Launch Phase 2. Colonel Murphy, you have a go." On the moon, Sam Murphy led a fleet of Earth vessels that had been hidden in the tunnel networks beneath the lunar surface. They emerged now, catching the retreating Krizon ships in a crossfire. For Earth, Sam transmitted to his pilots, "Don't let them regroup." Meanwhile, Frank Martinez led a special operations team on their most daring mission yet. Using a captured Krizon shuttle, they approached the massive alien command ship in Earth orbit. Their objective: capture or kill Supreme Hunter Krovak and seize the ship's central database. Final approach, Frank told his team as they neared the alien flagship. "Remember, we need to capture prisoners if possible. Their biology may hold the key to dealing with future threats." The human team breached the command ship through a maintenance airlock. The pathogen had been deployed inside, and they found corridors filled with incapacitated Krizon warriors. They moved quickly toward the bridge, encountering only scattered resistance. In one corridor, Frank came face to face with a female Krizon who was still standing despite obvious pain. She raised a hand in what seemed a gesture of surrender rather than aggression. "You're different," she said in halting English, clearly having studied human languages. "I am Zivra, analyst. I tried to warn them about humans." Frank kept his weapon trained on her but didn't fire. "Warn them what?" "That you are not just prey. You are persistence hunters. You never stop. Even apex predators fear persistent hunters." On the bridge of the Krizon flagship, Supreme Hunter Krovak fought through the pain of the human weapon. His bodyguards lay writhing on the floor around him, but through sheer willpower, he remained upright. He accessed the ship's communication system. "All Krizon forces retreat from this system. The humans have deployed a biological weapon." But it was too late. Earth's counterattack had caught the invasion force by surprise. Krizon ships attempting to flee were intercepted by Murphy's lunar fleet, while those still in atmosphere were shot down by reactivated defense systems. Frank's team reached the bridge and found Krovak still conscious but weakened. Zivra had accompanied them, serving as translator. "Supreme Hunter," she said in their native language, "these humans offer terms." Krovak hissed in defiance. "The Krizon do not surrender." Frank stepped forward. "This isn't about surrender. It's about understanding. You thought we were weak because we don't have your physical strength or natural weapons. But humans evolved differently. We survived by outlasting stronger predators, by adapting, by working together. You hunt the hunters," Krovak said slowly, comprehension dawning in his alien eyes. Back on Earth, cities lay in ruins, but human survivors emerged from shelters to see Krizon ships retreating from the skies. In Chicago, Darren Johnson led his neighborhood defense group in capturing confused alien warriors who could barely move from the effects of the pathogen. In her lab, Kate Wilson monitored the pathogen's effects. The neurological impact is temporary, she told Admiral Miller. They'll recover in approximately 12 hours. Susan nodded. That gives us time to secure prisoners and establish a stronger negotiating position. In space, the tide of battle had turned completely. The Galactic Council observed with astonishment as the supposedly primitive humans drove back the feared Krizon armada. Supreme Hunter Krovak stood alone in his private chamber aboard the captured flagship. Though the pain from the human weapon had faded, the sting of defeat remained sharp. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never failed. The Krizon High Command had granted him one final chance to salvage their honor. He activated a hidden console. "Prepare the World Killer," he ordered. "If we cannot have Earth as a hunting ground, no one shall have it." On the lower decks of the same ship, Zivra heard the order through the ship's communication system. Her research on humans had earned her a place as cultural interpreter between species, but Krovak had excluded her from this meeting. Now she understood why. She hurried to find Frank Martinez, who was coordinating the ship's occupation with Admiral Miller. "They plan to use forbidden weapons," she explained urgently. "World killers that will make your planet uninhabitable." Frank's expression hardened. "Where are these weapons?" "A hidden ship beyond your moon," Zivra replied. "It waits for Krovak's command." Frank immediately contacted Admiral Miller. Within minutes, every available Earth vessel was scrambling to locate and neutralize the threat. In orbit above Earth, the remaining human fleet gathered for a desperate final battle. Admiral Miller had taken personal command aboard the flagship of Earth's defense forces. "All ships, this is Admiral Miller. The enemy plans to deploy a planet-killing weapon. We must stop them at any cost." The hidden Krizon vessel emerged from behind Earth's moon, its massive form dwarfing even Krovak's command ship. At its center, a terrible weapon began to glow with building energy. Earth's ships moved to intercept, but the alien vessel's defenses were too strong. One by one, human vessels were damaged or destroyed as they tried to approach. Jack Harper, now commanding a small fighter squadron, watched his fellow pilots fall. His own ship had taken heavy damage, systems failing throughout the craft. "Admiral," he transmitted, "their weapon is charging. Estimated 2 minutes to firing." Susan's voice came back, tight with tension. "We need more time. Keep trying to breach their shields." Jack looked at his ship's status. The engines were overheating, weapons nearly depleted, but one option remained. "I can give you the time," he said quietly. Before anyone could stop him, Jack pushed his damaged fighter to maximum speed, aiming directly for the glowing heart of the Krizon weapon. The ship's failing systems meant their tracking defenses couldn't lock onto him properly. "Jack, what are you doing?" Susan demanded. "What humans have always done," Jack replied calmly. "Adapting." His fighter crashed through the weakest point in the alien shields and slammed into the charging weapon. The resulting explosion ripped through the Krizon vessel, setting off a chain reaction that tore it apart from within. On the captured flagship, Krovak watched in disbelief as his final plan failed. Earth forces quickly surrounded him, led by Frank and Zivra. "It's over," Frank said simply. 3 months later, Zivra stood before the Galactic Council as the newly appointed ambassador between humans and the interstellar community. Representatives from 24 species listened as she explained what had happened. "The Krizon failed to understand something fundamental about humans," she told the assembly. "Most species evolve either as predators or prey, but humans evolved as something different, creatures who survived by outlasting dangers rather than overwhelming them or fleeing from them." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Humans call it persistence hunting. Their ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, even though the prey was faster and stronger. This created a species that never gives up, that innovates constantly, that works together to overcome superior forces. The council members murmured among themselves. One elder spoke up. "Are you suggesting humans are more dangerous than the Krizon?" "I am suggesting," Zivra replied carefully, that they are different. The Krezon never learned to fear because they were always the strongest. Humans learned to overcome fear because they were rarely the strongest. And that made all the difference. On Earth, Reconstruction had begun. Admiral Miller stood with Frank and Kate at a memorial dedicated to those who had fallen in the war, Jack Harper's name prominent among them. The Galactic Council has invited Earth to join as a full member, Susan said. They're calling us the species that taught predators to fear. Frank looked up at the stars, now filled with possibility rather than threat. Not fear, he corrected. Respect.